It's beautiful here, thought Reynardo. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the mad rabbit, but something was not quite right. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Once, Reynardo had been to a dungeon where all the chests were locked. It was awful. Where did that go to? Reynardo felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, a few birds. He didn't count the ravens. Reynardo smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Reynardo thought. Maybe Lapina was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. surprisingly unwounded. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lupino got the core and then broke it, or lost it, or worse? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lupino was a touchy rabbit. Renato knew that. You're brave, I know, Renato said. But this is what I was hired to do.
At least let me run ahead and warn the scientists you're coming.
So, Lupino was intent on being a hero, just like him. War made sensible men crazy for glory, and Lupino had never been sensible. But what was the harm? Lupino might well trip over a hornet's nest of ravens. But that was better than ravens lying in ambush, wasn't it? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. Renato had no sooner rescued his friend than he was putting him back in danger. All right, he finally said as they landed. Go. As Renato watched Lupino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lupino? That was a recipe for disaster. Who needed bridges anyway? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato.
Renato felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. It was a bit windy up here. The Nexus Observatory had some of the Empire's greatest scientists. If anyone could rig the core into a useful weapon, and even better, make it stop leaking poison, it would be them. Trusty old sword was always a little better when he sharpened it. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy, did they sting if you didn't pay attention. The way they stayed back and lobbed pain and death from a distance. Cowards. Really dangerous, effective cowards. the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk.
The Ravens. They must have known we were coming,
said Lapino. How did you...
Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom!
I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base. The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. Ah, yes. The secret base. Not even Lapino knew where it was. They had engineers there. Those toads would surely know what to do with the core's power. And then he'd be free of it. But he couldn't take Lapino. The core would work its evil on him too. You stay here.
Give me the coordinates. I'll meet you there.
Someone needs to bury these scientists.
Well, why do I get all the fun jobs?
And with that, Bernardo returned to the Farfarer and took off. The ruins were quiet, but Bernardo could hear a buzzing in his ears. Was it bugs? Or was it the core slowly feeding him poison? The Council would know what to do. If the core had this much power, it could surely change the terms of the great battle that was coming. And maybe they would take this burden from him. Maybe.
Bernardo, smash!
He wasn't that good. Yet. Learned so much. It was time to turn it into something he could use. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship.
Oh, what was his name again?
Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough.
How had it come to this? Renato had signed on as an adventurer. Sure, the Emperor had gone mad. Sure, Renato had heard horrors from the ghosts of dead kittens and puppies sacrificed in his blasphemous rituals. But when he jumped in, he'd only been a little bored and slightly broke. And here he was, carrying a bucket of death across a broken landscape. Why not drop it and run? Because he hated to quit in the middle. That was his fatal flaw. He had to know how it all turned out. Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs.
Should have died a pirate, he thought. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Hero wall. Hero sword. Ice wall. Ice. Human.
He dropped the core at the entrance to the council chambers.
Get that thing out of here!
Croaked the speaker.
It's making us sick.
That's the core of the Sky Ripper, said Renato.
No, it's not useless at all,
said an engineer toad.
It's poisonous. Look at the fox. He's ill. Probably dying.
Yeah, not useless at all, said Renato. So what do I do? Rub it on His Majesty? The engineer chuckled. Renato didn't like it when engineers chuckled.
Oh, I got it. Listen, I can make a bomb and spread bits of the core all over a circle about 100 paces wide. Little chunks of poison and death. All you have to do is just get it near the Emperor. It'll kill him and his bodyguard and chop off the head of the fleet. Yeah, and if we're lucky, might poison some of the ravens around there as well.
What about me?
Right, what about you? Well, I'll build in a timer. You can set it and run.
No, that's a horrible idea, said Renato.
Well, we have to do something, yes,
said the speaker.
This is something.
Renato couldn't argue with that. And so, reluctantly, Renato loaded the rigged core onto the Farfarer and set sail towards the Emperor's ship. The rebels took the fight to the Imperial fleet, but Renato was too sick to enjoy the view. He must have passed out as a firm hand grabbed him and shoved him forward. This was it. The fleet seemed very big, and its ravens very tough. Or maybe he was just slower and weaker than before. He hated the idea of poisoning the enemy. It wasn't fair. Face to face with a raven, let the best swordsman survive. But they wouldn't even know what was killing them. Feather by feather, scale by scale. He didn't mind dying a hero. That sometimes went with being a hero. But he didn't feel at all like a hero. Not today. The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No? fun. Once you try it, you're hooked.
There was an inscription, no spitting.
Small step for a fox, he thought. Already Renato knew more than he ever had. But about what? He was exhausted. He was making stupid mistakes. His fur was coming off in bunches. Up ahead, he could see the Emperor's ship, long and sleek, a floating palace. The bomb would only poison a circle 100 paces wide. He would get as close as he could, set it, and run. Oh, this was a lousy way to win a rebellion, he thought. He didn't want to meddle for this. He just wanted to be forgotten.
Renato checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
Dying, he thought. I'm the hero. Renato had always wanted a flying carpet. This was more like a flying tabletop, but it would do.
Renato twisted the timer on the bomb as far as it would go and staggered off. His knees hurt. Oh, everything hurt. He staggered away as far as he could until he had to lie down. He could see the entire Imperial fleet from here, and the rebel ships engaged with it. There was a blinding flash. And a second later, a monstrous thump. Burning rocks arced across the sky over both fleets. A wreath of fire shot outwards, rolling across the fleets. A pillar of smoke boiled up from where the Emperor's ship had been. It reached into the clouds. That's a wee bit more than 100 paces, thought Renato. It took Renato most of that evening to die. Some of the toughest ravens lasted all week. Some of the rebels in the furthest ships survived as much as a month. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it.
air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last.
Wasn't making a dent in those shields. Those sheaves were really very well made, weren't they?
The ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Every day he was getting better and better. Renato wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not.
What's there?
How could a temple to Iblis still even exist? The Transcendent Emperor had destroyed all the shrines of the lost gods after exiling them. Had it been buried in that long-ago battle? Or had Iblis foreseen his fate and hidden it from his enemy? The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. No skateboarding, the sign said. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Blood. It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. Listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself.
To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? It whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting.
If only he had some way to break the ice, or convince it he was a friend. Open, says me. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him. Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. Kill her, whispered the stone. You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please. No, said Zenobia. Not that way. Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenobia's throat. Her eyes widened even more. And then the light went out of them. Renato felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such brilliance, exulted the Iblis stone. Tasty.
Renato returned to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly.
It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done.
The Nexus was beautiful.
He'd never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed.
The wind was so sweet, the sun so soft, the stones so warm, the black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke, under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is this the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was killing his way to the Imperial outpost and challenging the Emperor from there. Sometimes, Renato really hated inanimate objects.
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword?
He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. Really needed to construct additional pylons. Up ahead was Lapino. What was he doing here?
Bernardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me!
Why would I kill you? Asked Renato, although he had been thinking about it.
Well, you've become... no, I mean, no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep?
I suppose you wanted, Renato said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis. Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? Renato rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the Far Speaker Toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor. But there was only silence. Haha! The Emperor was scared, like little girl. Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his Far Speaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino. Renato called the Rebel Council to let them know to gather their forces. Then he killed the Far Speaker Toad. Why? Oh, because to make sure his sword was sharp. Oh no, that's awful. so no one else could use it. Yes, that's it. Then he set off for the ruins and a secret rebel base. The ruins were crawling with ravens. Probably looking for the secret base, Ronaldo thought. But then he realized they're probably looking for me. They must of me. Well, here I am. You are the honest warrior ever, whispered the Ibblestone. And he had to agree with it, for once. Who was as good as Ronaldo? Think of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Ronaldo had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Ronaldo was so happy. The stone was the best friend he'd ever had. Really? Who would bury such a treasure in the desert? Soon, he'd go rally the rebellion and usher a new age for the islands of Erda. Ronaldo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Is a very cool sword, thought Ronaldo. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. You are the best, urged the stone. Let me make you an emperor. Come to think of it, Ronaldo thought as he put down another raven, why shouldn't I be emperor? How did anybody get to be emperor anyway? By making war. I'm not counting the transcendent emperor, obviously, who had banished the lost gods and started time. Yes, he should be emperor. He would make a great emperor. Right, Stone? Oh, right. Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles.
Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Smelt burnt fur. What's behind door number 2? Renato strode into the council. Let's do this thing. Let's make me emperor. They looked confused and nervous. Ah, had he mentioned the emperor thing? He'd meant to bring that up later. I mean, let's go win this rebellion. He waved his sword around encouragingly. They ran. Cowards. He'd stop them. He cut down a few to inspire the others. But soon, there was no one to cut down. Well then, he'd have to attack the fleet alone. More for me, he said. Unless it was the stone that said it. Traitors. Traitors, all of them. They'd run rather than following him, rather than cheering him. What should he do to the cowards? Anything he wanted to. After all, he was a true hero, the best warrior there ever was. No one could stop him now. But first, finish him. The Emperor, that is. Where was the rebel fleet? They weren't even trying an assault. They were going to miss a day in history. The downfall of this dynasty, and a new one to take its place. He didn't have to kill all the ravens. He could enslave them, and enslave the toads too. All the animals would worship him as a god, for he had once been a god. They would willingly give him their blood and their souls. And the world would change, would become familiar again.
He felt like Tarzan. Keep this between us, if you don't mind. Caught one, Raven. Eat the rebel! Caught another.
Renato was glowing with dark power. Already the sun had dimmed. He could do anything, he realized. He could wrap the island safely in smoke again. He was beyond a hero. He was going to become a god again. How odd, he thought, that the Iblis Stone had nothing to say about any of this. Well, no matter. Once he killed this petty Toad Emperor, he would bring back the Black Sun.
He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? He found the Emperor and the Council huddling by his ship, plotting. They saw him and cowered before him.
Back to hell, fiend!
Croaked the Emperor desperately.
In the name of the Transcendent Emperor!
Croaked the Speaker. They held some arcane items he didn't recognize. He simply flexed his will and sucked their souls out of their bodies. And Iblis exulted. It is finished. And the void that had been a mere stone on a sword expanded. It stretched and ripped like a vast womb. And a gaze, black and pitiless as the sun, passed through the void into the land. And so time ended.
Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learn another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear-eyed, wholehearted, can't lose. This stone was incredibly valuable. Renato could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. Cool. Wish I could do that.
standing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? No one could beat Renato at hot potato. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am! The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was.
She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right,
said Lupino. Taking her would change the game, all right.
The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Renato felt a little bad stealing crafting materials from chests. He preferred to rob them from people at sword point. This was the nice part of town, but the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests.
these islands were short on trash cans. How could you convince a firewall you're its friend? There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Ooh, Renato loved to improve his gear. What exactly was Lupino up to this time? You could see the wheels spinning inside his head. They made Renato dizzy, in fact. So this was what it was like to die. Not nearly as much fun as they said.
Well, the eyes have had it.
So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait.
Said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo.
Oh, this is gonna be fun,
Said Lupino as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan.
Dreams may come, he thought. And then he found out. Renato felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Peppino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renato jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat.
Renato, she said. Are those new scars? They look good on you. You never return my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Ah, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two, said Lapino.
But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her.
She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lapino was right, Renato thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you? She said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Renato saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost, yelled Lapino. You have to catch her. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase.
He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. How could he have let her escape? Why hadn't he shackled her? Bernardo wasn't used to being on this side of the whole prisoner-jailer thing. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Bernardo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. "Oh, you left without saying goodbye." Again, he said, "Please, you're enjoying this a little too much," she said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebel secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? As they reached the ruins, Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. "What if we get separated?" asked Lapino, for once thinking ahead. "I'll show you a map to the base," Renato told Lapino. "Renato, don't do this," said Zenobia. "We were friends once. We..." "Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too," said Lapino. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Renato readied himself for the battle ahead.
I'm sorry I nicked your jacket.
She said,
It's just... Oh, God. It's stupid, but... It smelled like you.
"What?"
He said, confused. Then... Why didn't you ride? Why didn't you far speak?
Oh, save the romantic nostalgia. Let's go!
shrieked Lupino. So Renato launched himself down the path to the secret base. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Nice. That could be useful. He thought about Hypatia. Oh, she'd been an amazing rabbit. She could talk to him about comics, and talk to her son about history and battles, and talk to scholars about the ancient tomes hidden deep in the vaults of the Library of Ubar. Oh, Renato really missed her. Renato had misgivings. It had been Lupino's idea to capture Zenobia. Lupino who'd guessed she'd run to the outpost. There was something wrong with the way none of Lupino's plans had gone wrong yet. It wasn't like him.
Truth was, Renato really liked the sound his sword made in the air.
Well, no sense collecting more materials. It was time to make something pointy. They caught their breath. "It's beautiful," she said, looking at the ruins. "This used to be the library of Ubar," he said, "before your father's ravens smashed it." "Do we have to talk politics?" she asked. "That's not how I want to remember you," she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Peppino huffed. They got back on the trail. Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. That was always a rush. And this is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Ice walls only let you through if they knew you were cool. As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Renato felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves?
"You've been playing me?" Renato said, and he stared at Zenobia. "I'm sorry," she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then everything went dark. When Renato came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat. And her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. The terrible thing is, he said, I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?
I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies, he said.
The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose. Oh, never mind, she said. Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you.
He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided. Even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet.
The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running.
But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while.
There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? Boy, someone had spent a lot of money for a graduation present. Really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship.
Renado's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renado thought, he and Zenobia had left Sword Fu School together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. Not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this.
With all this ore, Renado could forge a really great sword. He was a master forger. That probably wasn't the right word.
These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house.
At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. "Why'd you have to come back?" she said. "Guess I'm just serving my destiny." He shrugged. "You don't even know what that word means," she said. "Do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time?" she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Renato lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the Path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game-changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Bernardo wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe.
Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Reynardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it.
As he set foot on the island, Bernardo could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive.
Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Reynardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling.
Sleep tight, thought Reynardo.
What does the fox say? Asked one raven. Another one called back, I'm dying! And they both laughed hysterically.
That had been his mistake before, not trusting Zenobia's feelings for him. But how could he have known, after all these years of silence?
The new pathway made Renato curious.
Thought Renato.
He needed some way to break the ice with this wall, so to speak.
Sometimes, at home, he'd wave his sword around for hours.
This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway?
Oh, you shouldn't have.
puzzle. Renato loved puzzles. Except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. The mysterious sword from the East made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense?
Hey! Hey! I'm a firefox, thought Renato.
The waterfall was spectacular. Well, you had to enjoy these things as they came. We passed this way but once.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. So that's what they meant by a firewall. What unlocks a firewall? You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. What else could you hook? There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest. The mice and rabbits. Where had they gone?
And he was getting hungry, too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
Now, before I kill you guys, Renato said, should let you know so I can get a good smoothie around here.
Who made all these ore chests anyway? Well, you could have quite a business doing that. If he ever had a castle, he was going to hide his stuff better. It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. This couldn't be good for global warming. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it.
Of course. If you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, you could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction.
And hopefully this time, just his destruction.
Renato hoped his mother wasn't watching.
Hoped his hook didn't break.
A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk.
The Nexus Observatory had the Empire's most renowned scientists, working by themselves without interference. At least, so far. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. This is quite the view, he thought. Was a weapons engineer, Renato would make the cannonballs go much faster and fire randomly, obviously.
Na. Hey. Goodbye. His mother never let him wave his sword around at home. He guessed he was still compensating for that.
Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed. Oh, Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use.
One way or another, there had to be a safe way to use it.
Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him. And then he would win the final battle.
Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump.
What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of.
danced around the room yelling, oh yeah, that's how we do it. It was something he liked to do, but only after he'd killed all the witnesses.
Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar book. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down. Tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calvaris would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper. And then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? could go that way, he thought. Renato had sacrificed a friend for the Skyrim. It would be worth it if he could bring a super weapon to the rebellion, but the scientists had ruined everything. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 128 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.716s in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once, Renato said. Although he wasn't sure that was entirely right.
Yeah, that's not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look. Just don't use it ever.
All right, I guess. As he sailed towards the fleet, Renato could see the drop ships of the rebels coming out of the clouds. This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it didn't go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he risk the entire universe in the throw of a dice? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21? Or was it 2.71? 6s in a row. He had a feeling they were surprisingly good. That is, bad. Anyway, the odds were big. His brain was hurting again. The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case. He hadn't noticed that path before. Don't look down, he thought. Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them, he'd destroy the universe. Ooh, that seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky River. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, when you had 3 knaves, but you pretended you had a fizbin. That could work. There were still so many games to play, Renato thought as he died. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. Renato told with the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once.
He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. "You won't actually use that," she said in that annoying, "I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox" voice she had. Or "I know the odds." Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't.
He felt sure the odds were with him. You have to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. "Fire," he said. "Please?" The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. Then he noticed
there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Renato, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. There would be a way to win. Renato could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens?